The end-of-year hustle and bustle filled the hallways of Boston General Hospital. Mary Campbell was hurrying toward the pediatric ward while checking a patient's chart. Her face showed the kindness and confidence earned from 12 years as a nurse. "Mary! Wait up!" Turning around, she saw her colleague Sarah chasing after her. "Dr. King has been looking for you. Something about lunch today." Mary glanced at her watch and let out a small sigh. "I should be done in 30 minutes. I'll make it." "How are the wedding preparations coming along?" Sarah asked with a smile. 2 weeks to go. "It's unbelievably busy," Mary replied with a smile. 5 years ago, while caring for a serious pediatric asthma patient, Mary met James King. She was touched by his calm demeanor in difficult situations and his deep compassion for children. Their relationship naturally evolved from hospital colleagues to lovers. When Mary finished her final patient check, James was waiting for her in the hospital cafeteria. He was tall, with kind brown eyes and an intelligent expression. "Good work today," James said, standing up to kiss her cheek.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
"How was your day?" "Busy, but fulfilling," Mary said, sitting across from him. "How about yours?" James showed a slightly tired expression. "My mother called yesterday. She wants to make more changes to the wedding guest list." Mary smiled gently. "It's all right. Your mother just wants everything to be perfect." Her relationship with Patricia King was complicated. After James's father died at a young age, Patricia had devoted everything to raising her only son to become a respected doctor. She was a well-known society woman who tended to be concerned about the King family honor. While she hadn't initially approved of Mary's profession as a nurse, she appeared to accept it on the surface. "Mother is a perfectionist," James shrugged. "But I'm really grateful you came into my life." Mary took his hand. There was a special understanding between them. During their second year of dating, James had confided to Mary that due to a serious kidney disease he suffered as a child, doctors had told him he was likely infertile. On the night of that confession, he had feared Mary would leave him. But Mary had embraced him firmly and said, "Having you is enough." They had prepared themselves for a life without children. They had considered adoption as a future option but had decided to cherish their time together first. "You were planning to meet Dr. Collins tonight, right?" James asked. Mary nodded. "Yes, to discuss your treatment results." Michael Collins was James's childhood friend who now worked as a fertility specialist. The couple had been quietly working with him, trying for a pregnancy despite the low odds. They had been trying new treatments but were careful not to get their hopes too high. "I'm really grateful to Mike," James said. "Without him, we might not even have hope." Mary smiled, but behind that smile was a small secret. For the past few days, she had been experiencing morning sickness and fatigue. Though thinking it impossible, she hadn't taken a pregnancy test yet, believing it was too unlikely to be true. "This weekend, Mother is coming to do the final check on the wedding attire," James said. "She mentioned wanting to go shopping with just the two of you." Mary couldn't hide her surprised expression. "Really? That's unexpected." "I think Mother is trying to get to know you," James shrugged. "In her own way." Mary nodded. Improving her relationship with Patricia was something she wanted to resolve before the wedding. She often wondered what lay behind the woman's stern gaze. After lunch, James returned to his patients. As Mary watched him walk away, she instinctively placed her hand on her stomach. If a miracle were to happen. With these mixed feelings of hope and anxiety, she headed to her afternoon shift. Under the bright lights of the drugstore, Mary stared at the small box in her hand. Her heart was racing, and her fingertips trembled. The previous morning, when nausea had sent her rushing to the bathroom again, she realized this couldn't be explained away as a coincidental illness. Back home, Mary immediately took out the test kit. The 3-minute wait felt like an eternity. And when 2 lines appeared in the small window, she gasped in disbelief. Pregnant. What had been thought medically nearly impossible was now becoming reality before her eyes. A miracle has happened, she whispered softly in her empty apartment. That evening, when James returned from work, Mary greeted him with a serious expression. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" James asked, noticing her demeanor. Mary took a deep breath and handed him the small test kit. "Look." At first, James didn't seem to understand what he was looking at. Then, as comprehension dawned, the color drained from his face. "Is this?" His voice trembled. "Is this real?" Mary nodded, tears welling up. "I checked twice. We're having a baby, James." He stood frozen, at a loss for words. Then suddenly, he embraced Mary, lifting her up and spinning around the room. "It's a miracle," he exclaimed. "Mike's treatment worked." They hugged, laughed, and cried. But amid the joy, a small anxiety crept in. "But I wonder if everything will be all right," Mary said quietly. "What if I'm scary?" James cupped her face in his hands. "Let's take it one day at a time. Whatever happens, we're in this together." The next day, James contacted Michael Collins, and they arranged for an immediate examination. At Michael's private clinic, James held Mary's hand throughout the ultrasound. "Congratulations," Michael said cheerfully. "Everything looks normal." About 6 weeks along. As they left the exam room, Michael gave James a strong hug. "See, didn't I tell you? Good thing you didn't give up." James repeated words of gratitude to his friend. Mary was also deeply thankful but was thinking about how to tell their families about this miracle. "When should we tell Mother?" James asked on the drive home. Mary looked out the window before answering. "It's still too early. Especially with the wedding coming up." She continued, choosing her words carefully. "I'm a little worried about what everyone will say." James squeezed her hand. "Mother might be surprised at first, but she'll be happy to know she's having a grandchild." "It's just that." Mary hesitated. "I wonder how people who knew about your possible infertility will react to this pregnancy." James's expression darkened. He hadn't considered that possibility. "They couldn't possibly think it's not mine." "But James," Mary said gently, "doesn't Patricia sometimes become extreme in trying to protect you?" James silently stared at the road. He knew his mother's overprotective nature well. "Then let's wait until after the wedding. We'll announce it together then. It'll be a perfect surprise." Wedding preparations were busier than expected. Mary suffered through morning sickness while managing meetings with the wedding planner, checking invitations, and attending the final dress fitting. Meanwhile, Patricia arrived in Boston as scheduled. She was staying at a luxury hotel, having come to make final wedding arrangements. "How have you been, Mother?" Mary greeted Patricia in the hotel lobby. Patricia, with her perfectly styled hair and pearl necklace, was as dignified as ever. "I'm fine. You look a bit tired," she observed, her gaze scrutinizing Mary's face. "Just busy with wedding preparations," Mary smiled. Patricia was eyeing Mary sharply. "I see. By the way, isn't this dress getting a bit tight? Your waist seems to have changed since the last fitting." Mary tried to hide her surprise. "I might be eating too much due to work stress." Patricia said nothing more, but suspicion lingered in her eyes. The two headed to the bridal shop, but the atmosphere in the car was heavy. That night, Patricia was making a phone call in her hotel room. "Yes, I want you to look into Dr. Collins's background. And his relationship with Mary Campbell too." She gazed out the window, holding a childhood photo of James. In the picture, a frail young James smiled weakly from a hospital bed. "I'll do anything to protect my son," she whispered. Meanwhile, at Mary and James's apartment, the couple was practicing their wedding dance. "Nervous?" James asked, guiding Mary through the waltz steps. Mary rested her head on his chest. "A little. But I'll be fine with you by my side." She didn't mention Patricia's suspicious glances. 1 week until the wedding. All she could do was hope everything would go well. The morning of the wedding day was blessed with calm, clear skies. Mary was in the church's bridal room, surrounded by her bridesmaids. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her pure white wedding dress. "You're nervous, Jennifer," her longtime friend said, placing a hand on Mary's shoulder. Mary smiled and nodded slightly. "A bit." She gazed at her reflection in the mirror, gently placing her hand on her stomach. The presence of the tiny life, still barely noticeable, but one she could feel. "But I'm happy." "You look absolutely beautiful," Jennifer said with emotion. "James will be breathless." Just then, there was a knock at the door, and Rebecca, James's sister, peeked in. "Ready? Everyone's waiting." Mary took a deep breath and stood up. "I'm ready." The church was filled with flowers and expectation. The solemn tones of the pipe organ flowed through the air, and all eyes turned to the entrance. James stood at the altar, waiting for her with a nervous expression. When Mary appeared at the church doors, supported by her father's arm, a small sigh swept through the gathering. She was dressed in pure white, with a gentle smile that radiated happiness. As she walked down the aisle, Mary kept her eyes fixed on James. But when she briefly glanced away, she caught sight of Patricia sitting in the front row with a cold expression. She was impeccably dressed as always, sitting ramrod straight, but her eyes held something like determination. Mary and James stood before the minister, holding hands. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were full of love and certainty. "Today, we gather before God to celebrate the union of these two people," the minister's voice echoed through the church. "Marriage is a sacred covenant where two souls become one." Vows were exchanged, and rings were placed. Tears glistened in Mary and James's eyes. "Now you are my wife," James whispered. "From now on, we'll share all joys and sorrows together. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace," the minister said, and for a moment, the venue fell silent. Mary couldn't help but glance at Patricia. She had her lips pressed tightly together, staring straight ahead. The reception hall was filled with warm light and laughter. Flowers adorned round tables, and chandelier light illuminated the celebration. Mary and James sat at the head table, smiling in response to the congratulations from family and friends. "What time are we making the announcement?" James whispered in her ear. They had decided to announce the pregnancy after dinner. Before dessert, Mary answered softly. Her heart was racing with expectation and nervousness. After dinner, the MC took the microphone. "Now, it's time for toasts. Would anyone like to offer words of congratulations to the bride and groom?" Michael Collins stood up, champagne glass in hand. "James, we've been friends since childhood. I'm truly happy to see you meet such a wonderful woman and find happiness." He smiled at Mary. "Mary, he's truly fortunate to have found such a caring, strong woman." Warm applause followed Michael's words. One by one, friends and family stood to offer their congratulations to the newlyweds. Then, unexpectedly, Patricia stood up. She wore a perfect smile, but her eyes concealed some other emotion. To celebrate my son's marriage, she raised her glass. James, you are my pride. From childhood, you've overcome hardships to become a fine doctor, and now you're celebrating this wonderful day. James smiled at his mother. Mary also showed a relieved expression. However, Patricia's next words shattered that relief. But before we celebrate, there's something everyone should know. The atmosphere in the room instantly froze. James looked at his mother in surprise. My son is being deceived, Patricia's voice trembled. This baby is not his. I have proof. A murmur of shock rose from the crowd. Mary felt the blood drain from her face. James wore a confused expression, his gaze moving between her and his mother. Mother, what are you saying? James asked, his voice shaking. Patricia opened an envelope she was holding and took out several photographs. Look at these pictures, she said with a trembling voice. Evidence of Mary and Dr. Collins meeting secretly. She held up the photos. They indeed showed Mary and Michael talking, but these were merely casual conversations in hospital hallways or cafes. And James, Patricia turned to her son. I know that doctors have told you that you might not be able to have children. A sound of gasps escaped from the audience. James's face turned pale. That was a secret he hadn't wanted to share with anyone. So this baby is. Mary stood up in surprise at Patricia's words. How do you know? We haven't told anyone yet. It's obvious, Patricia said coldly. Your dress no longer fits, morning sickness. I'm a mother. I can tell. She began walking toward Mary. Stop deceiving my son. This child is yours and Michael's, isn't it? No. Mary cried out. This baby is James's. Patricia interrupted her and suddenly pressed her hand against Mary's stomach. This child is not my son's. With that, Patricia grabbed a glass of red wine from the table and threw it at Mary's pure white dress. The deep crimson liquid spread across the dress, creating a stain that looked like blood. The room completely froze. Mary was trembling with shock and humiliation. James slowly stood beside her, looking at her with a pale face. Is it true? His voice was thin and shaking. Is this child not mine? In his eyes, she could see wounded trust and confusion. Mary felt her heart being torn apart. How could he doubt her? But he himself knew his condition, and the fear that what he had thought was a miracle might actually be betrayal was visible in his eyes. The venue fell silent, all eyes on Mary. She took a deep breath and slowly stood up, dragging her wine-stained dress. Mary took the microphone from the MC and surveyed the entire room. Her expression showed sadness and humiliation, but also strong determination. Now, I'm going to tell you all the truth. Her voice was quiet but resonated throughout the venue. Everyone held their breath, listening for the words to come. Mary looked into James's eyes and smiled slightly. In her eyes, alongside sadness, was unwavering love. James, do you believe me? Or do you doubt me without evidence? At her question, the venue was enveloped in complete silence. James stood frozen with a distressed expression. Mary took a deep breath and raised her face. Tears shone in her eyes, but they also held strong resolve. Everyone, Mary began in a calm voice, today was supposed to be a special day for James and me. And we were planning to share another blessing with all of you. She slowly placed her hand on her stomach. We are expecting a baby. And this child is undoubtedly James's. Patricia started to speak, but Mary raised her hand to stop her. "Let me tell you our story. This is a story of a medical miracle and proof of our love." Mary's voice gradually grew stronger. "I met James 5 years ago at the hospital. I was moved by his dedication to children and compassion for patients." She looked at James. "There's something he confided in me. As a child, he suffered from a serious illness, and as a result, doctors told him he might be infertile." A small murmur arose from the audience. James raised his face and returned Mary's gaze. His expression showed embarrassment, but also love for her. "We accepted that reality and decided to be happy together. We believed our love was enough, even without children," Mary continued. But James didn't give up. His childhood friend, Dr. Michael Collins, is a fertility specialist. With his help, we quietly continued treatment. Mary looked toward Michael. He nodded silently. "The photos Patricia saw are of me and Dr. Collins discussing treatment. We kept it secret because we didn't want to raise hopes. And..." She faltered slightly. "James's fertility issue was very private to him. He didn't want it made public." James slowly walked to Mary's side and took her hand. "Mother," he turned to Patricia. "Mary isn't lying. We were trying a new treatment. And this pregnancy really is a miracle." Patricia covered her face with both hands, trembling. "But the doctor said, you couldn't have children." "It meant the possibility was low, not absolutely impossible," James said gently. "Mike's treatment gave us new hope." Michael Collins stood up. "Patricia, I am also James's attending physician. His condition was indeed serious, but we didn't give up. We tried the latest treatments, and..." He smiled. "Miracles can happen." Mary took the microphone again. "I kept this pregnancy secret because I was anxious something might happen in the early stages. And I wanted to surprise everyone on our wedding day." She looked at Patricia. "I understand your feelings for James. As a mother, I understand your desire to protect your son. But trust, not suspicion, is the foundation of family." Patricia clutched the envelope with trembling hands. Tears were streaming from her eyes. "Was I wrong?" "Mother," Mary said quietly. "I love your son with all my heart. And this child is undoubtedly your true grandchild." At those words, Patricia's face suddenly contorted with anguish. "True." She choked on the words. "True grandchild." James asked with a confused expression, "Mother, what do you mean?" Patricia remained silent for a while, but eventually raised her face with determination. "I also have a secret." The venue fell silent again. Patricia gripped the back of a chair with trembling hands. "The reason I doubted your pregnancy," she looked at Mary, "is because I once did the same thing." James stared at his mother with a stunned expression. "What are you saying, Mother?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Your father, the father you knew, was actually..." She faltered. "He wasn't your biological father." Sounds of surprise rose from the audience. James's face drained of color, and he stood speechless. "Before you were born, I was in an affair," Patricia's voice trembled. "And I became pregnant. Your husband, the father you knew he was infertile. But he loved me, so he raised you as his own child." Patricia continued, tears streaming down her face. "I've carried this secret my entire life. Pure bloodline, the honor of the King family, it was all my lie." She approached Mary, stumbling slightly. "I saw myself in you. And I was terrified. I thought my mistake was being repeated." Mary stood before Patricia and took her hands. "But it's different, isn't it? I love James. And this child is proof of our love. Patricia collapsed to her knees. Please, forgive me. The venue was enveloped in silence. James couldn't move for a while, but eventually slowly walked to his mother's side. Mother, his voice was quiet. Why didn't you tell me until now? I was afraid. Patricia looked up. Afraid of losing you. Your father, he truly loved you. Even without a blood connection, you were his son. James silently gazed at his mother. His eyes reflected complex emotions, but gradually understanding and acceptance emerged. Blood ties aren't everything, he said slowly. What matters is love and trust. He took Mary's hand and gently touched her stomach. This child is ours. It might be a medical miracle, but it's proof of our love. Mary smiled and wiped away tears. Being a family means sharing everything, past and future. Patricia slowly stood up and looked around the venue, embarrassed. Everyone, I apologize for the disturbance. My ugly jealousy and past sins nearly ruined this beautiful day. She turned to Mary. I sincerely apologize for not believing you. Mary nodded quietly. Mother, it will take time to repair our relationship. But I want us to walk together as a family. Michael stood up and raised his glass. Let's toast the bride and groom again. And let's also celebrate the birth of a new life. Gradually, the venue was again filled with warm applause and words of blessing. James gently kissed Mary's cheek. I'm sorry for doubting you, he whispered. I can't forgive myself for doubting even for a moment. Mary squeezed his hand. It's all right. From now on, let's overcome everything together. She looked down at her wine-stained dress and laughed a little. It might be a bit too dramatic as a wedding memory. James also smiled. It's become an unforgettable day, uniquely ours. Hand in hand, they took their first step as a new family. 1 year later, on Christmas Eve, warm light filled Mary and James's home. The Christmas tree in front of the living room fireplace sparkled with colorful decorations, and small stockings hung from it. Elliot, look over here, Mary called with a smile, holding a camera. 5-month-old Elliot King was in James's arms, curiously staring at the sparkling decorations. He was a boy with soft, downy hair and eyes that looked just like James's. He really looks like you, Mary smiled. James answered while holding his son's tiny hand. But his smile is just like yours. Their new home was filled with love and hope. Since the wedding incident, their bond had grown even stronger. Mary had taken maternity leave and recently started returning to work bit by bit. James had adjusted his working hours to actively help with childcare. The doorbell rang, and when Mary opened the door, Patricia was standing there. In her arms were a large present box and a small handbag. Merry Christmas, Patricia said, looking a bit nervous. Merry Christmas, Mother. Please come in, Mary invited her inside. The relationship with Patricia had been gradually mending over the past year. She had been receiving psychological counseling and beginning to face her past. The first few months had been difficult even to meet, but when Elliot was born, Patricia visited the hospital and wept when she held her grandson for the first time. Elliot, look. Grandma's here, James said, lifting his son. Patricia's face lit up. He's grown so much, she carefully took her grandson. He's truly a beautiful child. While holding Elliot, she handed the handbag to Mary. This is for you. Mary took an envelope from the bag. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was a letter of heartfelt apology and gratitude, beginning with the words, "Thank you for giving me the courage to face the truth." Patricia had acknowledged her mistakes through tears and expressed her wish to cherish the bond as a new family. After reading the letter, Tears shone in Mary's eyes. She slowly approached Patricia and quietly embraced her. "It's never too late to become family," Mary said gently. Patricia wept while holding her grandson. "For a long time, I was imprisoned by my own lies. But now, I want to live in truth." James smiled as he watched the two. Since his mother's confession, he had thought a lot about his identity. And he had come to reaffirm that the man who had loved and raised him was his true father, regardless of blood ties. "Shall we take a family photo?" Mary set up the camera. "It's our first Christmas with 3 generations together." They gathered in front of the fireplace. Patricia held Elliot, with Mary and James standing on either side. The camera timer activated, and just before the shutter clicked, Elliot let out a small laugh. The photograph captured that moment, showing a family bound by new ties after overcoming past wounds. They had learned that true family isn't about blood connections, but about acknowledging mistakes, forgiving, and growing together.